Hey guys, this is Christian, and today we're taking a look at the new website that I'm currently building for my YouTube channel. Yes, I'm finally working on a new web project where I'd like to publish all of the videos that I'm making, including some notes, resources, and links. And I just thought it might be interesting to document this entire process for you and show you exactly how I'm building this in a brand new video series. Because if you had asked me some time ago about how to create a simple website, I probably would have told you to just use one of the most commonly used content management systems for websites called WordPress. But these days, that has changed a little, not just because of all of the news that were around WordPress a few months ago. No, honestly, I've never been a huge fan of the WordPress framework. I just didn't know any better way to build a website. Because WordPress is really a huge pain to manage, in my opinion, and you have to find ways to constantly optimize and maintain it. It is really horrible and takes a lot of time and effort. So for creating my new website, I've recently been searching for a much better framework that would allow me to build a website that is much simpler, requires less maintenance, and is out of the box super fast and reliable. And I found it. The magic word is static websites, and that is exactly what I'm gonna show you in this video. Today we'll build the foundation for my new static website using the Hugo framework. I tell you everything you have to know to simply get started and create beautiful websites that are super fast. And don't worry, you don't have to be an expert in HTML or CSS at all. This is all working by just using simple text-based Markdown files. Sounds great? Well, then keep watching and let's take a look at the Hugo framework together. Before we do that though, I quickly want to show you another incredible tool that I use for remote access called TwinGate, the sponsor of today's video. Whenever I'm connecting to one of my remote servers over SSH or accessing my administrative tools in my home lab, I use the Zero Trust Network Access platform TwinGate, because this is just so much better and more secure than traditional VPNs, and it is even easier to deploy. Because TwinGate allows me to securely connect to my local network from anywhere, even through NAT devices and my local firewall, without any port forwarding or firewall exceptions that I would have to enable. It is super smart, and furthermore, it verifies each access request that leaves my devices. Everything has to be authorized, otherwise TwinGate won't let the request go through. I've already done many tutorials and showed you how to install it using Docker or integrate it in Kubernetes or on your DevOps environments using Terraform, so it's a huge recommendation from my side. And if you want to check it out, it is completely free for up to 5 users and connects to 10 different remote networks. So what are you waiting for? Just start making your network more secure and accessible with TwinGate. Of course, I'll drop you a link to this in the description box down below. Alright guys, so now let's get on with building the foundation for my new website. Before we start, I quickly want to give you a little more context about static websites and why I'm doing it this way, because some of you might not be familiar with the distinction between a CMS, a content management system like WordPress, and a static website. Now, at its core, every website consists of 3 main technologies: HTML, the hypertext markup language, which tells your browser what the content of the website is, like text, images, links, forms, etc. Then we have CSS, cascading style sheets, that controls the presentation or the styling of the website, and nearly all modern websites also have a third technology called JavaScript on board. So this adds behavior and interactivity to your website, allowing you to dynamically add content updates, add animations, user interactions, these kind of things. And generally, if you want to host a website somewhere, you also have to have a web server, of course, so that delivers all of these files to your browser, where they're finally interpreted and presented to you as a user. So this is what we already call a static website, where the entire content consists in these 3 file formats. However, if you dynamically want to make updates to these websites, like if you have multiple people working on publishing articles, or if you want to store any kind of user information like logins, email addresses, or maybe products in an online shop, you also need a database, and that often comes together with a CMS, a content management system. So this is a system that takes the request from the user and then first makes a query in a database where all of the information and the content is stored in, and then it generates the actual HTML code using its processing language. And then finally the CMS delivers the HTML code together with the CSS and JavaScript to the browser. Before anybody says it in the comments, of course, this is a very simplified workflows. Technically, there can also be other technologies involved like CDNs and so on, but I just wanted to keep it simple to focus on the stuff that it actually comes down to when comparing a content management systems to static websites. By the way, WordPress is, as I said, one of the most commonly used CMS, but there are of course also others existing like Typo3 or Drupal that are probably a bit more well known. All have their pros and cons, but they all kind of share at least one big disadvantage over static websites. And some of you can already guess it because it involves a database query and a processing language where code or files are generated whenever a user requests something. A content management system will always run slower than a static website. And furthermore, any content management system also adds a lot more complexity to it. Like a database server alone might require additional computing resources and maintenance, more CPU power, more memory, depending on how many user requests your web server gets and how well it is optimized for that. This can add some heavy latency to any websites, which is the reason why many unmaintained WordPress websites are ridiculously slow. Of course, it is important to say at this point that I know not all content management systems are slow by design. Yeah, there are many ways to optimize a CMS to make it nearly as fast as static websites. We already touched on CDNs. You can also do caching, database query optimization and stuff like that, but you have to keep in mind this often requires still more resources, a better knowledge of the system, and regular maintenance of your database and content management systems. So that is basically the main difference. Yeah? Keep in mind that it doesn't mean that you should stop using CMS at all and only deploy static websites. Yeah? There are obviously many good reasons to use databases because it's the only way to actually store user information somewhere on the server side. But if you're just building a simple website that doesn't really need to store any user information, which by the way also makes a website better for privacy, a static website is, in my opinion, the best way to do it. However, I'm pretty sure that nobody wants to build or write static websites completely from scratch, like HTML, CSS, JavaScript completely on your own. That would be horrible for maintaining it and super complicated to create and publish new content. So to work around this problem, there is a solution, and that is called static website frameworks, something like Hugo is. So this handles some of the complexity of generating the HTML and CSS code for you, but without requiring a database and server-side processing when the user requests the page. So whenever you change the content of the website, the build process is happening automatically in your CI/CD pipelines when you make the change, and only the final HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files are uploaded to the web server. So when a user requests the website, no processing or database query need to happen. It will just deliver the latest files that were uploaded to the server. So this is super cool, super fast, and also interesting to integrate it with CI/CD and DevOps practices. Now, the last part we don't cover in this video, otherwise it probably would be 2 hours or 3 hours long. But of course, I'm working on a part 2 for this project because I want to build my website, yeah? So in part 2, we will cover exactly this automation and how to publish the website and deliver it to the World Wide Web. Today, we'll just start with the basics and we'll check out the Hugo framework on their official website, gohugo.io. So there you can get access to all of the files and the documentation. Hugo, by the way, is an open source project that offers great speed and flexibility. I absolutely love this, and it really makes website creation super simple and fun. Of course, there are many other static website generators like Hugo around, like GitHub's Jekyll, for example, but I just absolutely love Hugo because I found it to be the most simple framework for creating my website. Alright, so let's check out how to build a website with Hugo. I'm sorry for the long introduction, but I think sometimes it is useful to have enough background to understand why I'm actually doing it this way and not use a content management system. Anyway, so to build a website with Hugo, you first of all have to install the Hugo framework to your local device. So you can install it on any operating system like macOS, Linux, Windows, or even BSD. In my case, I'm using macOS, as you probably should know. And it is super easy to install because you can use the Homebrew package manager, but there are also other ways possible, like building it from source and so on. One thing that might be important to mention at this point is that Hugo comes in different types of versions, and it has an extended version that has many features that some themes require to function properly. So when you're using Homebrew in macOS, that automatically installs the extended version of Hugo to your local device. And this is also the way that I would recommend it to install. So just run brew install Hugo, and that's it. You can also add a specific version, but the latest version should also be fine. All right, so once we have installed the Hugo CLI tools, we first of all need to go to one directory where you want to store the website. And to install a new website, you simply just run the command Hugo new site, and then just give it a name that will also be the name of the folder that will be generated. In my case, I'm just going to call it my new website. I think that's fine. And then we cd into this directory and open it in VS Code so we can easily add content and change the settings of the website. Now, as you can see, the Hugo CLI tools have created a bunch of different directories and already some basic configuration templates and settings for your new websites. Let's first of all go quickly through the files and directory structure of Hugo, because this is really important to understand. So here on the documentation, you can see what each directory actually is for. I won't go through all of the details here, but the main directories are the assets directory that contains all the images, CSS, JavaScript files, scripts, and content like that. Then we have the config directory. This obviously stores the main configuration files. The content should also be self-explainable. And the public directory, let's see where this is. Yeah, the public and the resource directory. In simple terms, it contains everything you just have to upload to your web server to publish your website. And then there's also the themes directory. So this contains the Hugo theme, so how you want your website to look and function. By the way, let's talk about themes. So theoretically, you can build a Hugo website completely from scratch using your own HTML, CSS, and JavaScript templates. However, I would always recommend you to not start from scratch and instead just use one of the many free existing themes for Hugo. So you can find them on the website when you just go to themes. And here you can search for any theme, filter it by tag. So for example, if you're interested in a block theme, yeah, or if you want something for your technical documentation, maybe you want something more minimalistic. So you will find many good themes in here. In this video, I'd like to show you the theme Blowfish that I recently discovered. And this is the one that I fell in love with for my new website because it's built on the Tailwind CSS. And the Blowfish theme already comes with many features that are built in and great for creating my website. Like there is a YouTube video embedding shortcode where you can easily include any YouTube videos to your website pages. And there are also many other cool features. For example, this alerting function here would be really nice in my technical documentation to simply add a badge like this here. Or it also supports Git cards, GitHub cards, GitLab cards. Some interesting stuff for us developers here. But of course, if you're using the Hugo framework, feel free to try out any theme that you like. I'm not saying that Blowfish is the best for all websites. I just think it is best for the website that I like to build, right? So just check out something in here. But in this video, I will focus on installing the Blowfish theme. But generally, the installation process of these themes is most likely very similar. So when you go to the Blowfish documentation, you can also see an installation guide here. So here it is described what we have to do. And they have a CLI tool that helps you to get started with Blowfish. This actually installs a new Hugo project with the Blowfish theme already installed. But I don't like to do it this way. I personally would recommend you to use a GitHub submodule. So I can also use a Hugo module, that would be possible, but I think Git, because I'm using GitLab later for storing my Hugo website, I think that works much better this way. So what we need to do is we just need to follow these instructions here. So when we go to the directory, I think we're already in here. Yep, we can just paste the git init commands to initialize a new Git project in this directory, and then just add a submodule that will link to the Blowfish theme on GitHub. So this will automatically clone the repository to the theme's Blowfish directory. Alright, so once we have that, we can continue with the guide, because the next step is also pretty important. Every theme has a different way of how to manage config files, but generally, the main root folder of the website, there is the main hugo.toml configuration file that was created by Hugo. So Blowfish wants us to delete this file that was generated and copy the other toml config files from the themes directory in the config_default directory folder. So we'll just do that. And let's go to this here, delete the hugo.toml. And then in the themes directory, we have these files here. So these we need to just copy, create a new folder here, config_default, and paste it in here. Okay, so once we have these configuration files, you can see there is a hugo.toml file. This is again the main configuration file that Blowfish uses, but there are also others that might contain different settings. One thing that is also pretty important, because we didn't use the Hugo modules to install the Blowfish theme, we also need to add the line theme Blowfish at the top of the hugo.toml file in this config directory here. So let's continue with that, and then let's go to the next steps, getting started guide. So this explains all of the basic configuration functions and so on. But let's go through this together. So let's return to VS Code. And the very first thing that we need to do is we need to uncomment this line here that sets the theme to Blowfish. That's important. And also set the base URL. So this will be the domain. In my case, I want to use christianlember.de as my main domain for the website. And the default content language is English. So you can change this in the languages toml files. For each language code, you can make adjustments to all of these things here if you want. So for example, let's just go in here. And I want to change some of these parameters here. For example, add my name. And the image I will just link to my GitHub profile picture and put it here, so then I don't need to upload this myself. And yeah, so that's everything we need for now. Of course, I will also use some of the links here. For example, YouTube. And what I also like to change, and this is pretty cool in the Blowfish theme, because the Blowfish theme comes in different colors. So here you can see the color themes. And I think for my website, I will use the Congo theme. So this probably fits the style of my channel the best. So let's go to the params and set this to Congo. The default appearance should be dark mode, of course. There is an auto switch appearance in the Blowfish theme that is pretty cool, but of course, yeah, I want the default settings to be dark mode. Yeah, that's fine. All right, so these are all of the main settings. How to configure this website? No, of course, I want to see how that would actually looks, yeah. And the Hugo Static Website Frameworks has a pretty nice way of presenting this or working on the website. It has some developer tools that you can use to start a simple web server right on your local device to test your website and see how it looks. And then you don't need to set up anything yourself. You don't need to set up a web server. It doesn't require any internet connection. It just works immediately. And the cool thing is, whenever you change something in the parameters or in the content of the website, the web server is automatically reloading and rebuilding the website in just a few milliseconds. So you can immediately see all of the changes that you're doing in here and can really build your website step by step. I really love this. This is super cool. So let me show you how this works. You just need to enter the command Hugo server. And then I want to add two flags in here. Technically, you don't need them, but I think they are pretty useful. The fast renderer feature is a performance optimization that Hugo uses during the development, but sometimes it hides errors or shows incorrect previews. So if you want to make significant changes, if you're building the website completely from scratch, disabling the fast renderer guarantees that the website that you see is 100% accurate preview of what the final website will look like. And also the no HTTP cache is important. If you make changes to CSS, JavaScript, or image files, that ensures that you always see the latest version of those assets in your browser. Without, the browser might continue to use the cached versions, so you wouldn't see the changes that you're making, and that might be a bit confusing here and there. So I would recommend you to use these two settings here. Just hit enter. So one error message that we see here, and I think that's part of the reason how I deployed Hugo and added the Blowfish theme later using Git. that I get this error message here that it wouldn't be compatible with this Hugo version. But I've tested it multiple times, and for me it always works regardless of this error. So I think this doesn't necessarily have to be a critical error. You see it is also flagged as a warning. But yeah, I might just try out different deployment methods to see if that error message goes away when I just deployed using the Blowfish CLI tools, who knows. Anyways, you can see that this entire website just built in 112 milliseconds. So you can see this is super fast. Of course, it's really just a very basic website with no content files. It might take a little longer if you have more files that need to be processed. But as you can see, this is super fast, and you just have to open this location on your local device. So then you can see the preview of the website. Just copy the URL, paste it in here, and that's my new website, or at least the basic foundation of it. But you can already see my image is in here, the name is in there, yeah, the biography I might want to change. But actually, this would be a good test to show you how easy it is to simply change something in here. So let's return to the VS Code projects, go to params. Oh no, it was here in the languages. So here you can see that is the headline. So of course I want to change this here. I think that would look pretty nice. So if we return to the website, you can see it's already changed. And if we go into the server log, you can see that it was rebuilt even faster. Yeah, so that is super cool. You can make any changes in here and return to the website. It should be automatically reloaded, and you directly see how it's affecting the look and feel. All right, so I know we spent a lot of time on the basics, yeah, but I think it's really important to go through this in detail. Now you have a good understanding of how the Hugo system should work, and we can now finally start adding some content to the website and building it step by step. Now, just like I said earlier, Hugo organizes the content in the content directory. So if it isn't existing, just create a new directory here. And then this content is further structured based on content types and sections, which are basically just directories that you create. But a general tip that you should always follow, your content directory and how it's being organized should be in a way or in a manner that reflects the rendered website structure. So in my case, I'd like to publish some write-ups, articles about my YouTube videos. That's why I think it makes a lot of sense to create a new section called videos. For example, let's just start by adding a new video project. As I said, this is just a simple Markdown file that we are creating here, and now we can add text or other elements to this. But I still want to build the structure of the website and enhance it a little. So apart from the videos, I would also like to publish an About Me page, yeah, that I just put in the main content directory, or a resources Markdown file. By the way, if you want to change the content of the home page or the default page of any of the sections in here, you can use an underscore index.md file. So this is the main index file of the current directory. So if you just put this in the main content, this is the landing page. If you put this in the videos, this will be shown, or the content in here will be shown when you open the link of the section videos. So you can see there is probably the post for the Excalibur in here, but if you change anything in the index file of the video section, you can see the content above the other posts, okay? So I don't need it for this page. I think that just looks weird if you have some content before that. You could add something like, hey, here you can find all my videos or whatsoever, but I don't think this is important. Or maybe it would be interesting to show a link to the YouTube channel here at this point. I don't know. We'll see. Let's first go into my Excalibur post. So now I can show you how to add some content to it. Again, this just works like any Markdown file. You can add headings, add the description from the video in here. Can also add a list elements here, maybe to other tutorial videos. Maybe do it like this here. I think that would be better. You can, by the way, also add code blocks in here. And generally use any other formattings that you can use in Markdown. By the way, if you're not familiar with the Markdown language and how to build this, don't worry, there's a nice website that explains everything about that. That is called markdownguide.org. So this is a free and open source reference guide that explains how to use Markdown. So just go through it, dive into the syntax and learn everything about how to format this stuff. This is a pretty common standard. GitHub uses it, other technical documentation uses it, even note-taking tools like Notion or Obsidian use it. So this is a pretty common markup language, and it's also super simple to import any existing articles or existing posts that are formatted in Markdown into the Hugo static website. It's really amazing. This is, by the way, how it looks on the final website. So it's super simple to add more content to this. All right, so additionally to the Markdown language, Hugo also supports Frontmatter. Frontmatter is a section at the very beginning of this file that is a key value pair block enclosed by the triple dash delimiter. So here you can add things like the title for the page or add a description. You can also use it to add categories or tags that later can be displayed in the Hugo framework and can be used for searching or filtering. By the way, if you're creating a Markdown page that you don't want to publish, you can set the draft to true, so then it won't be generated when you build the website. And if you have other pages, like for example the About section, you can also use it to change the layout. So for example, if you go to this page, I don't want it to look like an actual post, so therefore I like to change it to something different. The actual layouts of your Hugo theme are usually located under Themes, Layouts, _default. So this contains the final HTML code that the Hugo website builder will later generate, but it of course also contains some placeholders and functions that are later replaced by the dynamic content. So in theory, you can customize anything in here to change the entire theme, put in your own HTML, CSS, whatsoever. But I would not recommend you to change these layouts if you're just using the theme and updating it. Otherwise, updates might overwrite them. So here is the base template that contains the main elements of the website, like the doc type, HTML. But there is also a simple layout that removes the author and all of that stuff above here. That is what I would use for these static pages like About Me, resources, and stuff like that. So when we go in here, we can change that to simple, and then it looks much, much simpler. So here you can see all of the settings that you can add to these pages to change certain settings. For example, if you want to show the author or not, you can enable or disable that. But this is, of course, then only active for that specific page. If you want to set the default parameters, you need to go to the config directory here in the params.toml file. You can see all of these default settings in here. For example, what I would like to do is I would like to show the author, but at the bottom. I don't like it that it is at the top of the page. So when I change this setting here, you can see it starts with the tutorial, and then at the bottom there is my little badge here. Now, one thing that I also wanted to do, this is super important for my website, I wanted to embed YouTube videos. Luckily, the Blowfish theme, this is also part of the reason why I've chosen it, this supports the YouTube Lite shortcode. Shortcodes, by the way, are small snippets of code that you can insert into your Markdown files to add more complex output. You can just copy and paste these examples here, adjust them, put them in the Markdown file, and then they are rendered. For example, let's just try out this here. Go to the Excalibur page and then add a button here. Then you should see this. All right, so it is super simple like this. So in case of YouTube video, you can just use the YouTube shortcode here. Maybe I like to add it at the top here. Of course, you just need to find the YouTube video ID. So in case of my Excalibur video, I just need to grab this little ID here, replace it here. That's the video. You can click on play and it automatically plays the video. So this is, of course, super practical for building my website. All right, so before we add the menu, one more thing. I didn't talk about how to customize this landing page or the home page. Yeah, this is real quick. Just go back to VS Code and go to params. So here is a section called homepage. Here you can change the main layout. There are some other valuable options like page. Then you need to put the underscore index.markdown file into content and can customize this to look exactly like how you want it. You can change it to hero, card, background. For example, let's change it to background. Then you can add a background image. that you need to put into the assets directory. For example, I have this cover JPEG banner. I just want to copy here to the assets directory, and then we can change the homepage image to the cover image, and that's how it would look like. But I'm still not fully convinced by this background look and feel. Yeah, I think I still want to go with this profile page here and just make it a bit more simple, because then it can also serve as a link tree replacement. You see the links to social media. Maybe one thing that I would like to add here, I think this is pretty important, to show the latest videos that I've created. So here, for example, you can enable the show recent. This will automatically add the recent posts in here. One thing that I want to show you real quick here, because you can see this is just a list of these tutorials here, how you can add thumbnails to this. So there is a specific practice that we need to follow here. We need to transform the content Markdown file for the Excalibur tutorial into a directory and add a featured .jpeg or PNG image to this. This will be the thumbnail, and then change the main article to index.markdown file. So let's try out that. I think that would look pretty nice. So first of all, I need to change this to index and then create a new directory, Excalibur tutorial, move it into here, and then I also need to add a feature image. Here is the Excalibur thumbnail. So let's move it in here and rename it to featured. Here, this is a homepage. There is a thumbnail for this post, and then you can directly see all the latest videos. This, by the way, is of course responsive. So when you open this on mobile, yeah, well, that doesn't look great. Maybe I can do something about that here, but at least you can see the recent videos with a thumbnail. You can click on this, which will take you to the post, the article, where you can find the resources, maybe code snippets, whatever is important. But yeah, I think that already looks pretty nice. There's just one more thing that is missing, because every good website needs an easy way of navigating and finding the content that you're looking for. You can still use the search function here. This already works, as you can see. But yeah, of course, a menu is super important. Yeah, and this is also really, really simple to create. There is a TOML configuration file called menus with many examples in here that you can find. So nothing too special about it. This is just a menu structure that I built. So you have a main videos, then you have a sub menu for tutorials, reviews, and tips. There's also a footer menu that you can use in Blowfish. I don't know if I want to use that. Maybe for the legal notice impressum that you need in Germany. It's a bit annoying, but yeah, I think that's a good place for these type of menus here. And yeah, so that is basically how the final website is looking, or at least the first version of it. I think we really built a pretty nice looking and functional website, and already added some useful content placeholders for it. In the next weeks, I definitely start working on the actual content. So now that I've created the foundation, and maybe I can try importing some of the posts or the videos that I've already stored in my Notion space. That would make it a bit simpler. Otherwise, I have to create all these things here manually. But maybe I'll start with the latest 20, 30 videos. I don't know how exactly I want to do it. But any new video project, I also will add to this page. And then when I finally publish it, this, of course, we will do in the second part of this video, then you should also be able to use and browse this website. I just need a couple of more weeks to prepare it and make a new video about the publishing and so on. If you want to give me some feedback, or if you have any ideas for new functions on my website, then please leave me a comment. Usually I read all the comments, and I'm really excited to hear all the feedback for this project that I'm currently building. And if you enjoy these videos, if they help you to accomplish and learn something, please consider supporting me on Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. That would be really amazing. So I think that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm gonna catch you in the part 2. Take care. Bye bye.